Chapter 26 Whitebridge. To everyone's relief, Matt finished his rendition of The Wind That Shakes the Willow, and Thom told him to stick to juggling. Rand is the musician. Rand asks why Thom tries so hard to teach them, and is told it's so they can earn their supper, in case they don't find the others. Rand insisted they were alive, but Matt told him they should accept that they're dead. The lookout called that Whitebridge was ahead, interrupting the boys' argument. The white bridge that gave the town its name came into view, as the crew ran around as Domman shouted orders to prepare. It arched over the Arenal, twice as high as the Spray's mast, gleaming milky white. It seemed too fragile to hold any weight, and Rand said that it looked like glass. Domman told him that it's never slippery, and nothing can mark it. Thom said it's from the Age of Legends, probably Aes Sedai built. Rand laughed as he told Thom that they made it to Whitebridge without a mutiny. As soon as the Spray was docked, Domman ordered Galb off his ship. He could leave by the dock or go overboard, but he was to leave now. Galb retrieved his gear and left, glaring at Thom and the boys. The trio retrieved their belongings, and Rand scanned the crowd, hoping to see their friends. Not seeing them didn't dampen his spirits. They still had the whole town to search. Thom suggested they keep an eye on Galb if they saw him in town. He may try to retaliate. Domman stopped Thom as he reached the gangplank, and asked if he would stay on board until the Spray reached Ilion. He wasn't oblivious to Thom's part in avoiding a mutiny by keeping the crew happy. Domman suggested that Thom take part in a competition for the best telling of the Great Hunt that's held during the Feast of Stephen. He handed the Gleeman a large purse. He was returning their fare, for his entertainment and the damage wasn't as bad as he'd feared, with an offer of twice as much if he stayed. Rand insisted they were leaving to meet with friends, so Domman told them that he sails at dawn tomorrow and the offer stands until then. As they walked through the crowds, Rand saw that Thom's cloak was attracting attention, and the news of a Gleeman would be across the town by nightfall. Thom told the boys that the best source of information comes from innkeepers, and Rand noticed that the town wasn't as busy as Baerlon. It still had a variety of shops, though the food being sold was meagre. The town square was full of inns, but Thom picked an inn seemingly by random, the Wayfarer's Rest. Its common room was empty except for a pair of workmen, and Thom asked the innkeeper for a place to speak in private. They were taken to the other side of the room, and Thom is offered free wine if he performs there. When they were alone, Thom was indignant at the offer. Gleemen expect room and board from honest innkeepers for performing. They double the business wherever they play. He explained that he chose this inn for its clear view of the bridge, so anyone coming into Whitebridge would be seen. The innkeeper brought the mail, and Thom asked for the latest news. He introduced himself as Bartim, and he told them that Loghain had been captured by the Aes Sedai after a big battle near Lugard. The roads are now full of refugees, all denying that they're followers of the false dragon. Loghain is being taken to Tar Valon, with the Aes Sedai displaying him in every village they pass. They've taken him to Caemlyn to be presented before Queen Morgase. They listened with interest, and Thom remarked how he could make a tale out of that. Bartim then told them that Ilion is sending proclamations, calling for hunters of the Horn of Valir to gather in Ilion and swear their lives to the Great Hunt, ready for the last battle. Thom quietly recited, "In the last lorn fight, 'gainst the fall of long night, the mountains stand guard, and the dead shall be warred, for the grave is no bar to my call." Bartim grinned and said that if Thom performed that tonight, his inn would be full. Everyone's heard about the summons. Thom looked distant, so Rand told Bartim they were looking for friends coming from the west, and described them as Thom glared at him. Bartim suddenly declared they were no longer welcome in his inn, and would leave the town if they were smart. Thom deduced that someone else had been asking about them, and asked the innkeeper who. Nervously, Bartim explained that a week ago, a weaselly madman arrived, talking about a group of people. He made such a commotion the town watch took him and put him out of the town. The last anyone saw of him was heading east towards Caemlyn. The next day another man arrived, dressed all in black, hood up, and a voice like snakes in dry grass, and a stare like ice. They could see Bartim had been truly scared by this stranger. He'd asked about the same group as well, and included the trio in his descriptions. He'd appear at random, no one ever saw him leave, and the gatekeepers never saw him arrive or depart Whitebridge. The trio exchanged looks. Murderel, they all thought, as Bartim left them to finish their drinks. Thom suggested taking Captain Domman up on his offer to go to Ilion. With the Great Hunt called, there'd be plenty of coin for Gleeman, and they'd be 1,000 miles from where the Fade expects. Rand insisted that they wait, then head to Caemlyn if no one meets them here. Thom declared it madness. The Fade will know full well their destination and route. Ilian will solve that. Rand was adamant that the murderer will find them wherever they go. Anyway, they still have their dreams to worry about. They need to get to Tar Valon with or without Moraine. Thom insisted that dreams really can't hurt them and tried to get Matt to agree with him. Instead, Matt rounded on him and asked why he cares about them. He can go to Ilian alone. They can take care of themselves. Thom laughed as he asked if they know enough to escape a murderer, and are they ready to hand themselves to the Amelin seat when they can't tell one Azure from another. If they really believe they don't need his aid, then just tell him to go. Gripping his ruby dagger, Matt growled at him to go, but was interrupted by laughter as someone was telling the patrons about Trollocs. Looking over, they saw Galb explaining, "It's true, I tell you. I've seen Trollocs in the Borderlands, and these three claimed they were chasing them. That's why I wouldn't stay on the spray. I've had my suspicions about Bael Domon for some time, but those three are dark friends for sure." Matt commented that maybe going back to the spray was a good idea, but Thom disagreed. Galb's story will spread for the Fade to hear. He began dividing the coin purse between the three of them, saying it's in case they get separated, but he's staying with the boys. Matt apologised, saying he was feeling off and on edge. They left the inn as quietly as possible and found themselves in an alleyway. Thom cancelled caution and Matt repeated his question. Why is Thom helping him? Wearily, Thom told them, "I had a nephew, Owen, my only living kin. He got into trouble with the Aes Sedai, but I was too busy with other things. I don't know what I could have done, but when I finally tried it was too late. Owen died a few years later. You could say the Aes Sedai killed him. If I can keep you two free of Tar Valon, maybe I can stop thinking about him." Leaving the boys with his instruments, Thom went to scout the area. When Matt questioned Tom's story, Rand asked him what's wrong. He hasn't laughed in days. Matt protested that he doesn't like being hunted like a rabbit. The running and strangers are making him jumpy and nervous. Rand said he's too scared to be nervous. They talked about Owen and how there's only one type of trouble they know of that gets a man into trouble with Aes Sedai. A hooded figure appeared at the mouth of the alley, cloak black as night. "Fade!" Rand scrambled up from where he sat, gripping his sword hilt, and Matt clutched his dagger. They sagged in relief when Thom threw back his hood and commented that if he fooled them, then it makes a good disguise. He told the boys to walk out one at a time and suggested Rand slouch to hide his height. As they walked through the crowd, no one paid any attention to them. Out of nowhere, a murderer appeared in the middle of the square, striding toward them. People shied away from him and the square began to empty. Rand froze, caught by its stare, and tried to summon the void. Thom urgently told him not to look at its face, and Rand tore his eyes away. He tried to move, but his feet would not respond. Matt had his dagger drawn, teeth bared in a frightened snarl. Thom warned Matt that he can't outrun it, then began to mutter to himself, "Owen, I never should have gotten mixed up with you boys." He thrust his instruments, wrapped in his gleeman's cloak, into Rand's arms and said, "Take care of that. When I say run, you run, and don't stop until you reach Camelin. The Queen's blessing. It's an inn. Remember that in case. Just remember it." Rand said he didn't understand, but Thom just snarled at him to remember. He pushed the boys, shouting at them to run. With a roar, he leapt at the Fade, daggers in hand, as Matt pulled Rand with him. The Fade was startled by Thom's attack, and it couldn't draw its black blade before Thom crashed into it, knocking it to the ground. Thom screamed in pain, but still managed to tell the boys to run, and clutching Thom's bundle, they ran. They fled through the crowds, knocking people out of their way, and Thom's screams faded behind them. They ran through the town gates and kept running until Whitebridge was out of sight. They collapsed in the dust of the road, gulping for air. Rand worried about Thom, but Matt insisted he was dead. Everyone is. Rand pointed out that if they were all dead, wouldn't the Fade know? So why is he still searching for them? Matt conceded the point, but still insisted that Thom was dead. And after they waited in hope that Thom would appear, Rand began to believe that Matt was right. They walked down the road, headed to Camelin, but Rand kept looking behind, still hoping that Thom would catch up, but the road behind remained empty. Thanks for listening. Please like, share and subscribe and help get a new channel off the ground. Thank you.